Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with the story of the strained relationship between our OP and his downstairs neighbor. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Complain to the rental company? Then enjoy being slightly annoyed. So my fiance and I recently moved in together in my hometown. Since we moved into the apartment about 5 months ago, we were immediately greeted by an older lady who lives in the apartment below us. She wanted to introduce herself to us and bring us a fresh pack of light bulbs. Guess she was out of pie. After introducing ourselves, she proceeded to continue speaking to us for about 45 minutes about how horrible experiences she's had with the renters above her with noise. Fast forward a few weeks later, and we have a letter on our front door from our realty company explaining that the lady below us and her neighbor have complained that we're too heavy-footed when we walk around our apartment, and we need to try to quiet down. We called the realty company to call BS on this complaint because we weren't home when the alleged incidents were occurring, and they quickly agreed that it was stupid but would tell the neighbors to come knock on our door if they heard it again. A week later, and as we're paying rent, the landlord pulls me aside to explain that the complaints are still coming. Naturally, this infuriates me as we've not heard from our neighbors, and they continue to smile and talk and ask for help on taking out the garbage and other neighborly things that younger folks should always help older people do. Well, since I can see where their respective chairs are located from their doorway every time I walk upstairs to my apartment, I always know when it's a good time to clean up. So every time I see them sitting down, ready to enjoy reruns from Andy Griffith or presumably watch the Weather Channel, I bring out my vacuum cleaner and proceed to vacuum my apartment for a good 20 minutes, right above where I know their heads are. Take that. And our next story. Factory security supervisor gets destroyed. When I first started working for security a decade ago, I was a bright-eyed and prim and proper employee who believed that the only way to be a proper man was to be a company man through and through. My dad ignored his family to be a company man, and while I hated him, I figured I could emulate him till I made it big and then tone it down when I wanted to start a family. I'm now 29 and have no family, boyfriend or girlfriend, and I'm still a company man, just for a few companies at the same time as a security operator and consultant. Imagine a much less bad A and non-criminal version of Mike from Breaking Bad, but with a beautiful head of definitely not graying hair. Okay, it's graying and thinning. Shut up. That's one thing I'm sensitive about. I signed on to a private corporation's private security force at age 18. In hindsight, we were a PMC who never left the property, firearms, Hummers, and all the fun toys to play with you could imagine. My boss was an a-hole, though. No matter how good you did your job, he would complain about something you were doing and threaten to write you up. He almost never followed through unless it was about firearms discharge. One night, though, I get called in after I'd already worked my 12-hour shift. After about a week, a dumb co-worker who did AM lockbox operations commented that I'd organized the lockbox by name and department to my boss. That's the first thing to tell me he wasn't very bright. I had bought brass circular key tags that I personally punched with the initials of every employee and the first letter of their department in my off hours. For example, A1S would be Alexander 1220, security, or CLH would be cleaning lady, housekeeping. I was written up and essentially had my hours cut in half for altering key sets and assigning sets to workers, which was not one of my assigned duties, despite being the PM keybox operator more often than not. I was merely to open the key box for employees when I was radioed that someone was arriving on site, then close it and patrol. It was my boss's job to alter keys or assign them to individuals, something he never once did. So I spent the better part of an hour taking these brass tags off the key rings and back into the giant key box for all departments and their 80 or so employees/spare rings, tossing them on hooks in a random order so my boss would have to come by and organize them. My boss did not. As I was leaving, he snidely smirked and yelled from his office, "You don't get to assign keys to employees, new guy. Maybe after you have a year under your belt, I might trust you to get my coffee." I go home for a good old-fashioned cry out of frustration, hatred, rage, and humiliation. But eventually I decided it was fine. I'd get him fired or get fired trying. The worst that would happen is I'd get unemployment while looking for a new job. Things changed, though, because after that day, when employees came up to the security offices to get their key rings, I would open up the lockbox and let them grab whichever set they wanted. When asked why they had to grab their own instead of being handed one, I would proudly shout out, "New orders, sir or ma'am. We open it for registered workers, not give them out." Other guards followed suit because everyone is a gossip, especially security, and heard what happened to me getting written up/hours cut for assigning key rings. This goes on for about 2 weeks with minor inconveniences, housekeeping calling us to unlock the garages and closets, maintenance calling us to unlock roof access, lots of stupid busy work that didn't happen when we were checking the keys before giving them out or during the 1 week we had my brass tags. Each ring has a different type of key based on what type of employee you were, what you needed access to. Factory workers didn't have office keys, office workers didn't have factory keys, only maintenance had roof access, housekeeping had keys to storage garages and cleaning closets, security had master keys. A criminal in maintenance notices this fact and does what criminals do. One day during my shift, he chooses a security key ring. I'm not paying any attention. After all, I don't assign keys to employees. Criminal ends up stealing a vehicle and a large amount of product worth over $100,000 before he's caught. He's on camera all over the site doing the various petty crimes too. But no one cared about the maintenance guy effing the hot temp in the office like he has for the past month. To us guards, the latter was free porn that we'd break up after completion, until it turns out that crap is missing about 2 or so weeks later when inventory is done. Criminal gets arrested for grand theft because he had stolen goods in his locker, and that was enough to get a search warrant for his home, but we don't recover the vehicle and over half of the stolen product. Here comes the fun part. I get called back into work 2 or 3 hours after my 12-hour shift again. I arrive in uniform, giant thermos of coffee in one hand and site phone in the other. I'm escorted by 2 other guards into a boardroom in the main office just off the factory. Inside is HR woman, the CEO, my boss, and a cardboard box filled with everything in my locker. Flashlights, 18650 batteries, cartons of cigarettes, lighters, duty belt, sidearm baton, cuffs, personal firearm, ammo, phone chargers, miscellaneous work things. You can start to see where this is going, and the wheel is spinning full speed in my head. At this meeting, I get chewed out 6 ways from Sunday by my boss about my negligence and how my negligence caused other guards to shirk their duties and act with negligence, causing the theft to be possible. And while I'm not criminally or civilly liable, I am no longer going to be able to work in security ever again. He'll make sure of that. This is all with HR frantically trying to correct him and placate me to cover their butts from a wrongful termination lawsuit. I just sit there calmly and let this go on with a self-satisfied smirk on my face, waiting for the time to shine on this exit interview. I knew my time to shine had finally come, and my moment of revenge would soon be upon me. Finally, after what feels like forever, my boss stops spouting his fat lips and the CEO starts. I have a few questions. Why did you stop caring? In your first few months here, you were constantly finding ways to improve security. There are email chains about concerns you had, blind spots in the cameras, redundant systems, and even piggybacking. Your file showed that you took great pride in your work, and the GPS on the site phone issued to you shows you still have some of the best patrol coverage. Most people in other departments have good things to say about you. You were fitting in well here, and you could have potentially been promoted to site manager of security in a few years if you hadn't given up. So why did you stop caring and allow this to happen? What changed in that office? My smirk drops into a predatory grin. The shark has smelt blood in the water. I ask HR, do you have my employment file so we could take a look at what happened a few weeks ago? HR leaves and comes back with my entire file, which is surprisingly large for only being there 6 months or so. Certs, degrees, monthly corporate training modules, weekly range qualifications, ammo inventory/requests, DARs, incident reports, use of force reports. I pull out my site phone and ask to connect to the CEO's laptop, and he tentatively agrees. I transfer 4 photos over to the laptop before giving the site phone with the password disabled and laptop to him. 1 picture of the key box pre-tags, 1 picture of the key box during my tags, 1 picture of the write-up, 1 picture of the key box post-tags. I then turn and look at my boss and say, Camera 7, 9/23, February 5th, 2008. If we watch the footage, we can hear you give me my new orders in the hallway outside your office. After all, you did tell me not to assign keys and open the lockbox for employees. I had no clue those orders would cause this debacle. The HR rep goes through my file and finds the write-up and shows it in full to the CEO, while the CEO punches in the date and time to the camera. I watched that recording every day in a rage and knew it by heart. It was a hallway PTZ camera. After the video finishes, I slowly reach into the box of my personal effects and show them the nearly 80 brass tags labeled with initials and divisions. The tags labeled spare, division, as well as 200+ blank ones. I was asked to leave the room by a furious CEO/frightened HR woman while my boss paled, and this time, instead of malicious compliance, I happily complied, knowing my revenge was going with surgical precision. Fact is, I knew someone would break, steal, enter an area off limits because they had access, and that means they had to see what was hidden behind the different departments. I never expected the size or scale of the theft, though. Nearly 30 minutes later, my boss was leaving the office with an empty box in his severance pay. The dumb butt who worked opposite of me was promoted. Turns out he'd mentioned it to the boss because of how much easier things had been since the new guy, aka me, organized the box, and the company gave me a bonus as well as buying the tags off me. I kept my job there, and dumb butt got to spend an hour reorganizing the lockbox with what was now the company's brass tags. Ended up leaving on good terms 18 months later when someone else offered me safer work closer to home for slightly less pay. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.